We invited the sisters into Refounding 2019, and we shared with the sisters that we were going to have a year discussing our identity and our culture. Who are we now as we're not running schools, as we're not running hospitals, as we are not in charge? And I remember, Karen, and if you don't mind, I'd like to look at our notes, because I remember the direction that we agreed to take, and we shared it with the sisters.
That's right, because you had 3 major points, didn't you? Yes. So let's hear them so we can remind ourselves what we started off with in 2019.
The elements of the 5th refounding piece were to uncover and name the shadow of our culture, to identify the best aspects of our culture which we want to take forward, and to let go of all that limits our inner freedom to discern the Spirit.
They're not easy things to be dealing with and trying to uncover in your identity and culture. What were the highlights for you around all of that in this year?
Our sisters, we, were so courageous. The contemplative dialogue circles were the highlights, and we've had 5 this year. This deep listening, this ability to be able to allow each sister to share the answer to the question that was posed. And then the ability to be able to feed back to the total congregation. And it was amazing, whether we were in Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, we were identifying the same thing. We even at one time, I remember you asking us to do a little examine and to agree from one contemplative dialogue circle to the next contemplative dialogue circle to do whatever was agreed to in the group. And for me personally, that changed my life. Wow. For me personally. Wow. And the other 2 sisters that I was in that group with, we would tic-tac with each other. How are you going? So it was sisters shared with me, I feel a freedom more and more. Wow. That I haven't felt before. I feel a trust. Other sisters shared with me, I prepared really well for these contemplative dialogues, and every time I went to one, it didn't work out the way I had planned. And I now get it. You come with an open mind to listen and to change.
Wow. They're amazing kind of changes, aren't they, in a group, given that, you know, life goes on around all of that, and you're saying 5 times you gather during the year. It's amazing that a revolution can occur in 5 gatherings over a year. When you think back over that, what do you think the journey was from that beginning time? What do you think's the emerging theme that's happening there?
Karen, I think we've been preparing for 5 years.
Right.
For this, and we shared at our last council meeting, and I think you were there. Look at where we're at. Whoever would have thought that we would be at this phase? And if I can just remind you once again, so we had the chapter, and
tell me what year that was again, Claire.
2014. So in 2015, yep. The conversation was on the key themes of the chapter mandate, and to go out and to share those with the sisters who weren't able to be present at the chapter. So the story began. In 2016 to 2017, we had the transformational leadership conversations. Now, some liked coming, some didn't like coming, but we had this wonderful book. But those who were there and those who talked to their friends along the way, you could see things were happening. 2018, we had the gathering in June, and we called it Bearers of Hope. Contemplative dialogue circles built upon the gathering feedback. And then in 2019, we had refounding 2019. So really, from chapter, we have been working on what our active chapter asked us to do.
Which is wonderful. Let's go through that again, but a little diversion for me. As I'm listening to you, Clare, there's a real sense of journey in that. And, you know, we're sitting in front of the triptych over here, which has pathways and journeyways and footprints.
And isn't that the theme of pilgrimage?
Yeah.
From our foundation, we've been on the pilgrimage. And I think, Karen, that the Acts of Chapter and what the chapter recommended, that we commit to a communal discernment process of refounding our congregation. We consider rejoining our founding congregation, our constitutions be revised, and we did number 4, elect 3 councillors. So that's what we've been working on.
Fantastic.
How fantastic are our sisters? And here we are about to embark on chapter 2020. So we've worked very hard. However, it's been enjoyable. And do you know what? Our sisters say to me, we know each other and we enjoy each other's company.
Isn't it a wonderful place to be?
Yeah, it is a wonderful place to be, yeah.
Clare, I hear that word pilgrimage and I always think of Glendalough in Ireland, which is really very close to your own heart and to the foundation of the Sisters of Charity. And it's that journey that you make, that walking through. And like Glendalough now is a ruined monastery, but it still holds the spirit. Yeah. And you feel the spirit. I feel the spirit when we go there. I have a sense in my working with you over the last 18 months that spirit is within you as the sisters, even though we're now in Australia and you've got a long history here as well. But there's that sense of the pilgrimage journey calling you forward a great deal. So it's kind of like it's not even the last 5 years that you've been on this journey, but rather that the Mary Aikenhead invited you to this point. Yes. And has journeyed with you. So what would your hope be for how the sisters might continue this journey in the next 12 months?
My hope would be that we continue seamlessly with the contemplative dialogue circles, with the courage, with the trust, and with the love that drives us today from those contemplative circles. You know, as well as I know, that sometimes when we're going into a chapter year, there's anxiety. Yeah. And it's an unsettled time for some. My prayer is that what has happened over these last 5 years will be within each one of us so that we won't be afraid. I think that golden thread through the gospel, I am always with you, and then do not be afraid. That's what we go into in 2020. And I also have a commitment that we will continue these contemplative dialogues, and we will be inclusive of everyone, so that when we do come to chapter is a little molehill. It's not that mountain that seems to happen each time. And from our last chapter, there was a commitment to the sisters that we would do things differently at this chapter. Now, I am very aware that we have made a commitment to the sisters, and it was endorsed, the chapter endorsed it, that the congregational leader and council initiating a conversation among the sisters to determine the most appropriate form of chapter membership for 2020 chapter. So that's something to look forward to.
So I hear in what you're saying, or correct me if I haven't heard properly what you're saying, that the piece for you as a group in doing this differently, so the CLNC doing this differently, is that you're inviting people to be engaged in this contemplative dialogue for the whole time, that it's not different and we won't go into another mode of operation, but rather the contemplative dialogue will hold and take us into the chapter piece of next year.
Yes.
And my experience, or the feedback I've seen from your sisters doing this, is that in fact this contemplative dialogue has held you at a gentle, peace-filled but courageous journey through some quite difficult things this year. So I guess there's a hope that that's exactly what it'll do for next year, and that sense of anxiety won't come up for people in quite the same way it has before.
Yes, and there were some heartaches after the last chapter, and we have been courageous enough to name that, and that's the more and more. We're not there yet. We're human beings. However, it's the more and more. We are more united. We are more at one. And we've come back to it, the whole refounding of sharing that love, tenderness and concern of Christ with all whom we meet, and looking at who are we now? Who do we want to be? What are we being called to? And we're open to it. We're open to it.
So that's a lovely phrase, isn't it? What is God calling us to be, and what is God calling us to right now?
Yes.
So it's that sense of being in touch with the present and open to the call of God into the future.
You know what the Pope says? Show up and be present. And our sisters are doing that. They're doing that very well. Just last Saturday at our contemplative dialogue, one of the sisters shared, since I've retired, I understand service of the poor. I can go out while the ladies are pigging out their washing and do this listening, this limitless listening. And she said, I had to run a school and I was far too busy to be worried about anything else. But now in my retirement. And another sister said, Claire, why didn't we do this contemplative thing years ago? We have been doing it all our lives.
Yes,
but it's the richness of this deep listening. And Joan Chittister, she talks about naming the vows differently. And she talks about courageous justice, reckless loving, and limitless listening. And I think that's what we're all about today.
Clare, I'm very conscious that in all of this you've been producing a communication today, tomorrow, that's been going out now since last June, and it connects us with our church. So do you want to talk a little bit about the significance of that piece of the journey this year as well?
Yes, there was a recommitment to our foundational charism, sharing that love, tenderness and concern of Christ with all whom we meet. As well, there was a recommitment to re-engaging with contemporary concerns and with our church. And it may have been a simple suggestion that came from Today Tomorrow about domestic violence, about how to not use glad wrap, or, you know, but as we discussed with our sisters that was part of the refounding 2019, so we would conclude that with our conclusion of refounding 2019. Sisters shared they had kept every copy of it, and that they had done this or they had done that, or they never realised about domestic violence, or they didn't, whatever. So it was meaningful for them. So I'm very grateful to the sisters who did that Today Tomorrow, to Tess, to Helga, to Colleen and to Anne Maybury. They were faithful to it, and everything is invitation. Isn't it? You know, everything is invitation.
Yeah. And it actually feeds back to what you were saying earlier about, you know, what is God calling us to be and what is God calling us to. And that's the combination, is that the contemplative dialogue and the Today Tomorrow passion together in the one place enables us to do far more than we ever thought we could do.
Yes.
That sense of it.
Yes.
So as we're now moving into this year, this next part of this journey, I guess for me, it'd be helpful just to kind of hear from you some of the things that have arisen that are the points for us to hold as we start this next phase of the journey. And I think you took some notes in this part, Claire, so it might be, do you want to get the notes out if you don't want to? Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's really important for us to remember what we have addressed already in the contemplative dialogue circles. What needs attention for us to create a culture of inclusivity and collaboration, respect and affirmation? What do I need to do now to be a person of reconciliation and forgiveness? How is my experience in these conversations affecting my life and ministry as a sister of charity? And to be the transitional bridge to chapter 2020. I marvel at it, Karen. I cannot believe that we are where we are today. But it's pure gift. It's pure gift. And I know we're, by the end of next year, we're 6 years older, but we're passionate. And we have got courage. And we can do this.
I think there's an invitation that comes to the sisters at this point in time.
I know that the chapter planning committee will create opportunities, loads of opportunities. They're going to be working very hard, as the suggestion in my letter to the sisters asking for nominations for the chapter planning committee. The sisters whom they've nominated have to be prepared to give 50% of their time towards the chapter planning committee. So that's big. Yeah, that's big. However, my invitation to every sister is to enter into prayer, enter into reflection, enter into dialogue, and let's continue this contemplative dialogue circle, deepening our listening, deepening our respect for each other, and as I said, the golden line in the scripture, I am always with you, do not be afraid. So Karen, this is a true journey for us. Let's continue these contemplative dialogue circles with the deep listening, and let's celebrate who we are and where we've come over these 6 years. It's been a wonderful journey, and let's say Amen and yes to all that is.